Welcome back to another episode of Woo with Proof. I'm your host, Lindsay Smith, and today we're going to be talking about something that I have been dealing with in my own personal life. And I feel like usually when I'm going through certain things, it's an opportunity for me to speak about what's been helping me through it. And I've realized so much after like the last couple of weeks of really diving into what was going on that I think it's really going to help a lot of you. So this is what I'm talking about. I have this experience when my husband leaves for work, or if my dog is quiet in the other room, my brain immediately jumps to the worst case scenario. And it's not even about anything real that's happening. There's actually no evidence of anything, no reason why. It's just this constant kind of low grade bracing for something bad to happen. And it's like part of me is always scanning ahead, trying to catch the disaster before it arrives. So I have some kind of head start on the pain, I guess, right? And I know I'm not the only one. I've heard from so many women that I work with, and it's not just like about someone dying or a big tragedy either. It's someone doesn't answer the phone when you call them, or your kid being quiet upstairs, or your partner running 15 minutes late. It's like that little hum underneath your whole day of something could go wrong here. And, even when statistically, most of the time, nothing ever does happen. And for the longest time, I thought it was just like me, who I was. I was just an anxious person. It's my personality. This is just my lot in life, right? Some people are just wired to worry more. But the more and more that I've done this work, the identity work and the nervous system work specifically, the more that I've realized that this isn't a personality trait, it's actually a pattern. And all of our patterns we know have origins. So they're not random and they're not permanent. So today I want to walk you through where this actually comes from, why your brain and body do this, and what fragment work has to say about it. Because in my world, we work at the fragment level. And I also want to talk about a process that I didn't quite understand, but once I did, it really helped me. And it's what integration actually looks like. So I want to first share a little bit of my own story here because I think it explains this so well. And honestly, because I think it's the reason that I can talk about this with so much conviction is I haven't just learned this from a textbook or reading. I actually have lived it. So early on, my life had a lot of instability in it. My parents split up when I was really young, like before I could even form any memories of them together. And in fact, I don't have a lot of memories from my childhood. There was just a lot of movement, so different homes, different situations, not a lot of consistency to hold on to. And here's the thing about being a kid in an environment like that, you don't really get the luxury of just being a kid. Some part of you has to grow up a lot faster than it should because someone has to be paying attention. So my nervous system learned really early on to scan for things, to watch for what was coming next, because things changing without warning wasn't the exception in my life. It was actually the norm. And then later on as a teenager, I went through something that broke my trust in a really foundational way. And I'm not going to go through all the details of it partly because the specifics of this really are not the point. What matters here is what it taught me. So I ended up having to leave home and figure out how to take care of myself before I was really ready to. I had to build a life from scratch. And, as basically still a kid, it was difficult. And what I learned really young in my body, not just in my head, was that things can fall apart really fast. And when they do, you might be on your own to handle it. And I share that not to relive my experience and genuinely not to point fingers at anyone. That's not the point of this episode, and it's not the energy that I'm trying to bring to this. I just share this because I think it's important for you to understand that anticipatory anxiety is almost never random. It's not like a chemical glitch that you have or some kind of bad luck in your brain wiring. It's a nervous system that learned early that staying vigilant was the price of safety, and that watching for the exit or watching for the shift, watching for the moment it all changes, that was actually adaptive, okay? It kept a version of you safer than she would have been otherwise. And I think once you can see it that way, once you can really look at your own anxious patterns and say, oh, that's not a flaw, it's actually a strategy that I built, it stops being a character flaw and it starts being something that you can actually work with. So that shift alone was really huge for me. So now let's slow down for a second and actually talk about what's happening in your brain and body when this mechanism kicks in, because I think the science can back everything up that I just said, and it makes this feel less like a woo concept and more like a fact of how humans are built. So your amygdala is your brain's threat detection center. So it's the part of your brain that's constantly and unconsciously scanning for dangers in your environment, right? It doesn't wait for your permission. It doesn't run by your logical brain first. It just fires. And when that system has been shaped by real instability early in life, right? Genuine unpredictability, genuine loss, genuine chaos, it becomes highly sensitized. It gets really quick to fire, quick to interpret ambiguous situations as being dangerous. And it's really quick to generate worst case scenario, even when there's no actual danger present. Now, anticipatory anxiety at its core is your brain trying to create a sense of control over an unpredictable world by manufacturing scenarios in advance. The internal logic goes something like this. If I can see it coming, I can prepare for it, and maybe, just maybe, I can prevent it. And it feels really productive, trust me. It feels really responsible even, like you're doing something useful by worrying about it. Now, here's the problem though. Worry doesn't actually prevent anything. There's no version of this where rehearsing your husband's death in your mind actually makes him statistically safer on his drive to work, or for my husband, flying in airplanes. What worry does do is create the same internal physiological signature as the loss itself would. Elevated heart rate, cortisol flooding your system, your body moving into fight or flight. So functionally, you end up living the emotional experience of loss over and over and over again in advance for something that not only hasn't happened to you, but in most cases never will. And that's the trap, right? You're paying the emotional cost of the worst day of your life on a random Tuesday for free in advance, and sometimes daily. And, I think it really matters because this isn't a discipline problem. You can't just choose not to do this the way that you might choose to skip a dessert if you're trying to lose weight, right? This is a nervous system pattern. And nervous system patterns respond to nervous system work, not to willpower alone, which is exactly why the deeper fragment and somatic piece of this matters so much, and we'll get there. Now, the work that I do, when I talk a lot about fragments, and a fragment, if you haven't heard this before in a previous podcast, but a fragment is basically a protective identity, and it's a part of you that formed in response to something that wasn't safe or wasn't met, usually in your early years of life. And anticipatory worry is almost always being run by one or more of the fragments that are underneath the surface, even if you've never even named them before. And so this was a lot of the work that I have done, recognizing this anticipatory anxiety when it would come up for me. And then I would really sit with myself and dive into, what part of me is actually anxious? Where is this coming from? And this is the work. This is where you really get to liberate yourself, okay? So now the first fragment, and this is probably the most obvious one when it comes to this particular pattern, and it's called the abandoner. So she's the one that braces for loss, that is scanning for signs that people or things that you love might disappear. So she forms when there's been like a real early instability, which if you were listening to my story, you can probably guess this is the fragment that I know very intimately. And this is the one who shows up for me when my husband isn't answering my phone calls, or, my dog is showing some irregular breathing patterns. Even though he's perfectly healthy and normal, this is the stuff that comes up for me, right? And then there's the controller. Okay, so she's the one that believes if she can just predict everything, manage everything, and stay one step ahead of every possible outcome, she can prevent the bad thing from happening. And worry becomes her strategy for control. Okay, so she's the one over planning, over preparing, mentally rehearsing every version of a conversation before it happens, because the unknown feels unbearable to her. And then underneath both of these, you guys, there's usually a deeper one. And this is the one that honestly took me the longest to actually see clearly because it's quieter and it hides underneath those louder fragments. And that's the unworthy one. when I really sat with my own anticipatory anxiety and I asked myself, okay, but what am I actually afraid of underneath all of this? It wasn't the loss itself that I was most afraid of. It was this quiet sort of foundational belief that I won't be able to handle it if it happens. And I don't have what it takes to survive that. That was the real fear driving the whole pattern for me, and it is for a lot of us. The abandoner and the controller are often just strategies for managing that deeper fear, right? If I can predict the loss, if I can brace enough for it, maybe I won't be as destroyed when it actually comes, because some part of me doesn't trust that I'd be okay otherwise. Now, depending on your own story, you might also recognize the performer in this. And this is the one who believes that if she's just good enough, if she's just easy enough, impressive enough, then nobody will leave her. Or there's the hider. This is the one who manages fear by staying really small, not asking for much, not taking up space, because being seen led to being hurt, criticized, or rejected for you. Now, I want to be really clear here about something. The point isn't that every woman has all 5 of these running at once, or that your anxiety has to look exactly like mine, but the real work is figuring out which one of these is actually driving the bus for you, specifically, because that's how we're able to change it, and that's how you work with it. So I want to paint a few pictures here because I think sometimes we don't recognize the pattern until we hear it described in a certain shape that isn't our own. So maybe for you, it's not your husband or your dog like it is for me. Maybe it's your kids. And every time the school's phone number pops up on your caller ID, your stomach drops. Or maybe your job. Every time you hear your boss say, "Hey, got a minute?" your brain automatically goes to, "Oh God, I'm getting fired." Even though 9 times out of 10, it's about something completely mundane. Or maybe it's your health, and every little ache you feel or weird symptom that you have sends you into a spiral of worst case scenario, Googling in bed at 11 o'clock at night, right? So different triggers, but same underlying architecture. Some fragments inside you learned that staying one step ahead of the bad news was the only way to survive it. And your brain has been running that program on autopilot ever since and applying it to whatever's most precious to you right now in your life. So now here's the question that I think that we actually have to sit with, because I know some of you are probably thinking right now, but the people that I love are going to die someday, right? My dog isn't going to live forever. Isn't the anxiety just correct? And here's what I've come to understand about this, and I think it's really the heart of this whole episode. The anxiety isn't wrong about the fact of loss. Loss is real. It's coming eventually for all of us. And that is just part of the deal of being alive and loving people and having a dog that follows you from room to room, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that if you just think positively enough, nobody you love will ever die. That would be a lie. And it would honestly be kind of insulting to your intelligence. What I am going to say is that what the anxiety gets wrong isn't the eventual truth. It's the timeline. So it's not actually preventing a future loss. All it's doing is stealing a present moment that you do have right now today. Every moment that I'm spending rehearsing my husband's death in my mind or imagining something happening to my dog is a minute I'm not actually present with either of them. And while they're both here right now alive with me, I'm missing that. So the goal was never to convince myself that loss isn't coming. Again, I would be lying to myself, and your nervous system is smart enough to know when you're lying to it. The goal is to stop pre-living it. You can't overcome the fact of mortality. Nobody can. And I'd be skeptical of anyone who tells you that they've transcended that, but you can overcome the compulsion to rehearse it every single day in advance on a loop. So that's the actual trade that you're making when you live inside anticipatory anxiety. You're choosing certain guaranteed suffering right now in this moment today over the mere possibility of pain at some point, some unknown point in your future. And when you say it out loud like that, it becomes pretty clear that that's not really a good trade. It's not even a rational one. It's just a very familiar one. So if you're anything like me, you might be sitting here thinking, okay, great, I understand all of this intellectually, but why do I still feel anxious? Like, this is my story. I knew intellectually in my mind what I was doing. And I was like, but why does this keep cropping up? Why do I keep experiencing this? And I want to be really honest here with you, because I think this is the part most people kind of gloss over. Understanding a pattern and integrating a pattern are two completely different things. Integration is not a light bulb moment. It's not just one good journaling session that you have, or one breakthrough conversation, or one podcast episode. It's your nervous system has been running this program for years and maybe even decades. It takes repetition, you guys. It takes your body actually collecting new evidence over and over and over that you're safe now, right? That this relationship is not that relationship, that this moment is not that moment from your childhood. And I have had difficulty with this, particularly in the area of relationship with my husband, because I've experienced so much trauma within the confines of romantic relationships and partners that I had to teach myself over and over and integrate it that I'm safe now. He's not the same person that I was with in my other relationships. This is a different experience. And it took just doing this repetition over and over again, teaching myself that I was safe so that I could feel comfortable and calm within the relationship that I'm in now. So let's get practical for a second, okay? In the actual moment when the anxiety spikes, here's what genuinely helps. First, you have to regulate your body before you try to talk yourself out of anything. So slow, intentional breathing. Box breathing is my personal go-to. And that's when you do 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out, hold for 4. And you just do this over and over again I do it for 10 repetitions. Your nervous system can't hear logic when it's activated. You can't think yourself out of a body that believes that it's in danger. Okay, so body first always. And this is something that I tried to do in the beginning stages when I was being activated. It's like, oh, well, I'm thinking the thing, but my body is still activated, so it wasn't actually working. Once you're a little bit more regulated, then you can ask yourself the questions, right? What am I actually afraid of right now in this moment? Not the surface fear, but what's underneath the fear. And sometimes, honestly, it gets really intense. Sometimes your body will even start to shake. And I want to normalize that for you right now, because it used to really scare me when that happened. Like, I would think that the shaking was me falling apart. But what I realized, it's my nervous system trying to discharge activation that it's been holding on to, sometimes for years. And it's actually a sign that something's moving, not a sign that something is wrong with you or that you're broken or anything like that, okay? And that brings me to something that I really want to share with you, because it changed a lot for me personally. A while back, I started doing holotropic breath work, which if you haven't heard of holotropic breath work, it is this really intentional, pretty intense breathing practice designed to help you access and release emotional material that's been stored in your body. And during one session, I had a full emotional release. And I mean like a real one, like crying, shaking. My whole body was just moving through something. And it wasn't graceful. It was not pretty. And it wasn't something that I could have willed myself into with just self-talk alone. And afterwards, I felt lighter than I had in a really, really long time, like genuinely lighter. Something had actually shifted in my body. Not just my understanding of the pattern, but like actually in my body. And that experience is what really taught me that integration isn't purely a mental exercise. Sometimes a pattern is stored in the body, not just in your beliefs, and it needs to be moved through the body to actually shift it, through breath work, through movement, through some kind of somatic release, not just through thought, not just through journaling, or even just through talk therapy. All of those things have value, but for some of us, there's a layer underneath it that only the body can access and release. And I spent years, you guys, years and years and years in the mindset trap, trying to think my way and journal my way and subconscious mind belief my way out of the experience. And nothing shifted for me until I actually got into my body. So let's bring this all the way back down to earth, because I don't want to just leave you with a theory here. If you notice the anticipatory spiral starting, say your partner is running late and your mind starts to jump to the worst case scenario, the sequence looks something like this. You're going to pause. You're going to breathe very slowly and very on purpose for a minute or two. Even if it feels silly or like it's not doing anything at first, I want you to continue to do it. And then you're going to ask yourself gently what you're actually afraid of underneath the surface story that's going on. Is it really about them being late, or is it about an old fear that you'll be left, that you're going to be alone, that you won't be able to handle it if the worst case scenario happens? And let yourself actually answer that instead of rushing past it. Really, you guys, sitting with yourself in a quiet place, going inside of your body, inside of your mind, is the most powerful thing you will ever do. It's the most loving thing that you'll ever do. And I know so many of us want to avoid the experience of sitting with that uncomfortable feeling. We don't want to go there. So we try to avoid it by drinking, by going out with friends, by Netflix, binge watching shows, by doing anything we possibly can to avoid that. But this is where we liberate ourselves. And this is the part that most people skip. So actually look at the evidence in front of you. How many times has this exact worry been wrong before? How many times has your husband come home safe? How many times has your dog been totally fine after 5 minutes of silence or irregular breathing, right? Your nervous system needs you to actually point the evidence to it out loud if you have to, because it's not going to notice it on its own. It's probably too busy scanning for that one exception, right? And over time, again, not overnight, not after one episode of doing this, that repetition is what actually starts to recalibrate the system. And this is not a perfect thing, but you need to do it enough until that anxiety stops running your whole entire day and your whole relationship and your whole nervous system. So here's what I really want you to walk away with today. The next time you find yourself bracing for loss, worrying about people you love, worrying about your own capacity to handle whatever life throws at you, know that's not a flaw. That is not you being too sensitive or too much. That is your nervous system. And it's a nervous system that learned somewhere along the way, often a long time ago, that vigilance was the price of safety. And the work isn't pretending that bad things are never going to happen to you. I can't promise you that. But the real work here is building enough trust in yourself, real, evidenced, lived-in trust that you know no matter what comes, you will be able to move through it. Not because you predicted it, not because you controlled it perfectly in advance, but because you actually know who you are underneath all of that bracing, underneath the fragments that were just trying to keep you safe the only way they knew how. So if this resonated with you today and you want to start figuring out which fragment is actually running your own pattern, because it might not actually look like mine, I need you to start going deep and asking the questions. And if you need support with this is exactly what I'm building and what I'm doing. And it's the whole purpose of this podcast and the whole purpose of the container that I'm building right now for women is to recognize these fragmentation, these aspects of you that are running your life. And we're working on integrating this and helping you to feel safe and whole so that you can manifest and create a life that feels really good to you, not a life that feels like constant anxiety and over worrying, because you deserve better than that and you're worthy of it. So if you like this episode, if you know somebody that could benefit from hearing something like this, please do share it with a friend. If you haven't yet subscribed, I would really greatly appreciate that. Having you here means so much to me. It's why I do this. It's literally for you guys. And it's taking all the things that I am going through and have gone through and paying it forward so that I can help support you through your own experience and your own journey. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you guys, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye.